Welcome back. Our top story again. President Trump announced late Tuesday that he has fired Director of the FBI, James Comey. I want to bring in Zeke Miller, who is a CBSN contributor and Time political reporter. He's in Washington. Zeke, this is only the second time in U.S. history that an FBI director has been fired. What more do we know about the reasoning behind this decision and also the timing of it?
Well, so there's the public reasoning, the rationale put out by the Department of Justice and the White House, which is regarding Director Comey's handling of the Clinton email investigation. That's the public reason. What's not clear is if there is some sort of ulterior motive behind the White House's decision-making. Certainly that's what Democrats are charging, and even Republicans now, including Senator Bob Corker, John McCain, and others, are suggesting that there is reason to suspect, at least, that something else might be going on here, given the timing and also the nature of the president's statement in his letter to Director Comey, which pointed out that that Director Comey had told the president on 3 occasions that he was not personally a subject of any sort of investigation. So, taken together, that and the fact that he's being fired for something that he did, a press conference that he gave in June of last year, and also
in a press conference that President Trump campaigned on gleefully.
Exactly, over and over again, used on the campaign trail, and had praised him on Twitter multiple times about. So all of that taken together is giving people in Washington, lawmakers on Capitol Hill, a lot of pause and raising a lot of questions from the White House.
Senator Chuck Schumer tweeted just a few moments ago, if we don't get a special prosecutor, every American will rightfully suspect that the decision to fire Comey was part of a cover-up. Is the senator's concern justified?
There's certainly a good bit of that. We're hearing that echoed from some Republicans, maybe in language not that strong, but certainly the president of the United States here, is, if not personally, but certainly people around him are the subject, as Director Comey testified just a week or so ago, of an active counterintelligence investigation over their ties to Russia in regards to possible collusion, which would undercut sort of the legitimacy of President Donald Trump. So, just that basis alone certainly raises those questions, and also the handling of it. The fact that they made this announcement with no warning, without briefing those on Capitol Hill, and with doing no legwork to try to come up with a successor. If the White House was going to say, we're going to fire Director Comey because of his handling of something that happened 10 months ago, but here is this other stand-up, well-respected, federal law enforcement official who can take his place. If they had that announcement ready to go, then you would certainly still get the questions, but they would certainly there would have been this you wouldn't have this deafening silence now and even the skepticism from Republicans and Democrats that we're seeing. The way they handle it, the timing, all of these things together are making life very difficult right now for the Trump White House.
Zeke, if you could stand by for us, we're going to take you to CBS News chief congressional correspondent Nancy Cordes, who asked Virginia Senator Mark Warner what he made of the development.
Senator, your reaction to Donald Trump's decision to fire James Comey?
Well, I didn't think this administration could surprise me anymore. Today they surprised me. I think the president's firing of Jim Comey was outrageous. I thought the timing is more than a little bit suspicious. We now have seen this president, this administration fire the acting U.S. Attorney General, Sally Yates. We've seen him fire many U.S. attorneys. We've seen him fire now today FBI Director Comey, who I think was doing a good job on the investigation into ties between Russia and Trump organizations. We've also seen the National Security Advisor, General Flynn, have to resign because of ties with Russia. The actual Attorney General have to recuse himself. And now this firing, there's a lot of dots to connect. And I really worry on a going forward basis. One, that's why I think we need a special prosecutor or independent counsel. That's why I'm open to an independent commission, although that would require a full law being changed, and I'm not sure this president's going to actually appoint independent commission members. So it means more than ever that the Senate Intelligence Committee investigation, we got to keep it bipartisan. We got to follow the facts. And I think following the facts got a little bit harder after today's actions by the president.
James Comey was scheduled to testify before your committee this coming Thursday.
Yes.
Is he still going to attend?
Well, I doubt if he'll attend on Thursday, but it is still my strong desire to have now former Director Comey come and testify before the committee. What did he know? We know he knows that there were a series of investigations going on between the FBI and investigating Trump officials in terms of their connections with Russia. I want to know about that. I want to know as well any other additional facts that he could share, both in a classified and non-classified setting.
Is it possible that James Comey can be more candid with your committee now that he's no longer in the federal government?
I'll leave that for the lawyers and the experts on classification to determine. But we have to still have Director Comey, former Director Comey, come and testify. Listen, this is greater than any single president. This is about rule of law. This is about what the Russians tried to achieve last year in the 2016 elections when they tried to sow discontent and lack of faith in our democratic processes. This ongoing cloud that hangs over the administration, we've got to sort it through, and unfortunately the president made it a lot harder by his actions today.
Do you think he's going to end up regretting taking this action?
Listen, time will tell. It will also determine whether there will be people in the administration, and for that matter members of Congress, who will rise above partisan politics now and say, hey, this pattern, if there's no there, fine, but this pattern bears a thorough, complete, factual, real facts, not alternative facts, factual investigation. And I've said this before, if there ends up being nothing there, I'll be the first to acknowledge that. But boy, oh boy, with the president's actions, not just today, but his comments over the last few weeks, his whole approach towards our investigation really raises a huge level of concern with me.
Virginia Senator Mark Warner, thanks so much for talking to us. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Mark Warner there with our own Nancy Cordes. Mark Warner joining a growing number of Democrats coming forward and more stridently than they have to this point, calling for a special investigation, special prosecutor to carry forward the investigation into possible ties between Russia's election meddling and the Trump campaign. Zeke, before we go into that, I want to update our viewers on a bit of color here on how Director Comey was fired. He was in the L.A. field office, scheduled to appear in Hollywood tonight at a recruiting and mentoring event where he would be talking to potential FBI recruits. Instead of going to that event, he was informed within the building that he would no longer be of service with the FBI. Now, the White House is continuing to defend its decision to allow 18 days to pass between the time it received warnings between Michael Flynn about Michael Flynn having been compromised by the Russians and his dismissal. At this point, what is the Trump administration doing to deal with that wing of the Russian scandal? It would seem to some that what is happening is the firing of Comey is, according to the Democratic senators who are issuing statement after statement, a cover-up of what exactly might have happened in this still confusing and mysterious Flynn episode. Your reaction, Mr. Miller?
So far, all we've heard from the White House, other than these official statements, has been a steady parade of them forwarding on statements from Senate Democrats, Democratic members of Congress, when they either months ago or weeks ago called on Director Comey, then former Director Comey's firing over his handling of the Clinton email investigation. So if the public or official line for his termination holds, they're saying, well, Democrats wanted this done just months ago, but that was before that Director Comey revealed the existence and just how deep this investigation into the Trump campaign was on Capitol Hill, and also, as Senator Schumer said when he spoke briefly not long ago, he said, "I called for Director Comey to remove himself rather than to be removed by the president," and that creates a whole nother level of optical issues for the White House.
Another bit of reporting I want to bring our viewers up to date on, something I'm sure that you and your colleagues in D.C. will be chasing in the days ahead. According to Michael Schmidt of the New York Times, senior White House and Justice Department officials have been working on building a case against Mr. Comey since at least last week. And Attorney General Jeff Sessions had been charged with coming up with reasons to fire the director of the FBI. If that is true, if that bit of reporting from the New York Times proves to be true, what are the political ramifications?
If that does prove to be true and it can be documented, certainly that raises all sorts of issues for the Trump White House, because then it creates essentially a cause and effect. You see, you'd have Director Comey testifying on Capitol Hill about this active and ongoing investigation into Trump associates, and then the White House turning around and trying to get him out of that job. That would be a massive issue for the White House. You'd hear, if Democrats right now are sort of have the dial turned up to 8 or 9 on the outrage machine, that would send them to 15. You'd start hearing the impeachment word thrown around, because that would start looking a lot more. That would start looking truly Nixonian if you can if you can prove the cause and effect there.
Indeed, and. I mean, you mentioned the possibility of evidence supporting Attorney General Jeff Sessions being charged with coming up with reasons to fire Comey. The reason that's so significant, as I'm sure many of our viewers know, is because Sessions himself had stepped back from the investigation into potential Russian meddling and ties to the Trump administration in our November election. He stepped back because of undisclosed meetings with a Russian ambassador. He's not supposed to be involved at all. So if he is now shoulder tapped or called over and given this very specific task, it could be very, very troubling for people who are worried about the direction of this administration. Politically, what do you think the best strategy is for Democrats going forward? How can they make the most out of this really shocking development from the White House?
The challenge for Democrats will not be taking this too far. The more they, if they're chomping at the bit right now to sort of to start calling for to call for a special prosecutor, that's fine. That's an achievable aim for them. If they try to start shooting for the moon and trying to bring all sorts of other changes, if they were to start calling for resignations or anything like that at this point, that would be a political loser. But something like keeping the slow drumbeat for independent investigations, bringing more documents over from the White House, more people from the White House testifying before Capitol Hill, the appointment of the special prosecutor, all of those things not just advance their aims in this investigation, but also sort of a political aim of sort of creating this cloud around the White House, so that it works for them on multiple levels.
Now, is there an appointment that President Trump can make to fill Comey's position? Some kind of an appointment that just magically solves all of this, quiets down Democrats, restores trust in the FBI, as the White House is saying that it hopes to do. Is there such a person out there who can accomplish all these things?
It's really hard to see such a person, and if that person were out there, certainly the events of the last several hours would be something of a cautionary tale for them to even take in that job. So is there the intersection of a Venn diagram of a perfect candidate for this job who can restore bipartisan faith, and also who would take it? Certainly, nobody jumps to mind. You can see people in the Trump orbit who certainly want the job, potentially like a Chris Christie might do that, a former federal prosecutor. He has his own issues in his own state, any federal prosecutor, find a U.S. attorney somewhere in the country who's very well respected, certainly. But they would be essentially being plucked from obscurity into the most powerful one of the most powerful federal law enforcement jobs in the country, and they have a very tall bar to clear to prove that they can exercise independence of the president and of the Trump administration. It's not clear that's even a surmountable bar. Certainly, there'll be some Democrats who will always be raising those doubts, but nobody jumps to mind right now who can fulfill that role.
We're getting a nugget of breaking news here that the event that former Commissioner Comey, was supposed to attend in Hollywood has been canceled. He will no longer be appearing to recruit future members of the FBI because he himself is no longer a member of the FBI. Zeke, I want to read a statement now from ranking member of the Intelligence Committee, Adam Schiff, who has been very vocal in his concerns about the Trump administration. And the second paragraph here is quite remarkable. The same president who has called the investigation into the Russian hacking of our democracy and the potential complicity of his campaign a fake cannot pretend to have made such a decision uninfluenced by his concerns over Comey's continued involvement in the investigation. Do you think Americans are going to believe Adam Schiff on this or the White House?
Right now I think Democrats have the messaging upper hand. This certainly looks fishy. The timing is odd. It's unusual to have, to see an FBI director fired to begin with, an FBI director who being fired a week after saying that his department his bureau was investigating people around the president. being fired for something that he did almost a year ago. All of those things together make the Democratic messaging on this, and of course it's not just Democrats. There are some Republicans also who are sounding the alarm about this as well, saying it seems odd, it raises questions. They want to hear more from the White House about their justification here. So it makes things a lot more difficult for the White House and a lot easier for their opponents to score either not even just political points, but also raise real issues the way this was handled.
Now, in the evolving soap opera portion of this story, we have news that Keith Schiller, longtime Donald Trump body man, personally dropped off the letters to the FBI offices in L.A., which got into the hands of James Comey and did the work of firing him. What we don't have to complete the picture in people's minds is whether or not Comey had the letters read to him, if he read them on his own, if he was by himself, how he reacted. I'm sure those details will be coming in the days ahead. So we just read a statement from Adam Schiff. I want to switch now to a statement from Republican Majority Leader Mitch McConnell, who does not raise any questions and instead says, once the Senate receives a nomination for FBI director, we look forward to a full, fair, and timely confirmation process to fill the director position. This is a critical role that is especially important as America faces serious threats at home and abroad. Now, that statement strikes me as unique in its complete detachment from what much of the news media and the American public is discussing in the aftermath of this sudden firing of James Comey. Politically, what do you make of McConnell's tone?
That's very Mitch McConnell. That's somebody who's a frequent consumer of those statements. I think the signal he's sending there is he knows that there's going to be a confirmation fight around whomever Trump nominates to fill that job, probably because there is no sort of white knight waiting in the wings who could suddenly restore confidence out there who could do that. But that also, he's laying down a marker that he expects it to be a confirmation process, not just a bunch of nomination hearings. Republicans are in the majority in the Senate narrowly, but they're in the majority. The nuclear option has been deployed, so it's a 51-vote threshold, and that his goal is to try to get that person over the threshold, whenever President Trump makes that nomination.
All right, Zeke Miller, CBSN political contributor and politics correspondent for Time Magazine. Zeke, thank you very much.
Thanks for having me.